It's our first race preview of 2026. Tim Hauraney, are you ready? Are you excited?
Oh, buddy, I am so excited. You have no idea. I've been waiting. I want to say 90 days. I think it's been 90 days.
It doesn't, honestly,
days.
it doesn't
Who
feel like
cares?
it. It feels like it was even less, I think, because the season just never felt like it stopped last year because of this regulation change and all the podcasts you did sort of over the winter break, just updating people because there was so much to get through. And then, it's the craziest thing for me, someone gave me shit. I was at a hockey game on Monday night when the Leafs were taking on the Flyers, and it was the worst hockey game I've ever seen in my life in person, like legitimately awful hockey. And so the guy that took me, my friend Sebastian, said, "Hey, listen, you told me that Aston Martin were going to be a huge contender in 2026. What the hell happened?" And today, and of course, we talked about this in our season previews with Nelson, but in case people don't know, they're not going to finish the race in Australia. And I want to read you team principal Adrian Newey's statement, and I'm also going to read you Koji Watanabe's statement. He's from the Honda Racing Corporation. He's their president. And here's what Adrian Newey had to say. This is very corporate, by the way. What we tried to concentrate on was having a good, sound architectural package. I think we achieved that. Therefore, I believe that the car has a huge development potential in it. It will, of course, take time for us to fully realize that potential. So I think it's fair to say that here in Melbourne, we will be behind the leaders. Obviously, it's not where we want to be, but with the potential to make progress and be competitive. Now, Koji Watanabe said, based on the extensive dyno testing, we will introduce countermeasures now that we believe to be the most effective solutions at this stage. Only once the car runs on track will we have full understanding of whether the countermeasures are effective. So, certain limitations will be applied to the power unit this week. Honda Racing Corporation and Aston Martin Aramco Formula One team will continue to work closely together as one team with further countermeasures already under consideration. Tim, in the press conferences that they gave today, Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll said, the shaking in the car is so bad, forget the underpowered part, which we can talk about. Shaking in the car is so bad that Fernando, if he goes anywhere past 25 laps, will risk nerve damage. Lance said more like 15. Aston's not going to finish this race. We know that. Are they going to finish qualifying?
Oh, well, I mean, Adam, it is only one lap, so maybe.
Are they going to finish practice? Like, what's that? How bad is this? Like, this is terrible.
It's not good. It's not good at all. Look, so let's start with Adrian Newey.
Let's do it.
I heard from Adrian. We're recording this on Wednesday evening.
Yep.
And in Australia, it's Thursday morning. So did hear from Adrian in his press conference that he had with Koji Watanabe. So those quotes that we were just rattling off there from about Fernando and Lance, those are quotes from Adrian. They're not Lance or Fernando's quotes. However, we can dive into that part of it because the vibrations that are coming through the power unit, and this is how Newey explained it, is essentially there's vibrations coming through the power unit, the internal combustion engine, and the MGUK. And since the entire
What's an
chassis,
MGUK? For people that don't know, the MGUK is
the motor generator unit kinetic. That's what's going to be helping harvest all the energy that's going to go into the battery. You're going to hear about it a lot this season.
Okay.
So the chassis is made out of carbon fiber. Carbon fiber doesn't dampen things, right? It's stiff. It's very rigid. It can be very brutal. And it basically acts like a tuning fork when you put vibrations through it. So vibrations coming from the power unit, MGUK, that basically was shaking the car so much they were losing like mirrors, they were losing the tail lights off the car, things were breaking, components inside the battery were breaking, so they're running out of spares to put onto the car. Also, on top of all that, Adrian said that Fernando had said that he could only go 25 laps and then he may get nerve damage in his hands. Lance thought he could go 15 laps. Now, I haven't heard from Lance yet. I have heard from Fernando, and he did say that the shaking is really bad, but when you're full of adrenaline and if you're in the lead of a race, he said you can, I'm paraphrasing, you can push through anything. So, I mean, we're getting some mixed messages here, but at the same time, either way, it's not good, right? If the thing is shaking, then you're going to run out of spares. And if you run out of spares, then you're not going to be able to really make it to the next race. So there are countermeasures that have been put in place for this weekend. They're not sure if they're going to work. Nobody knows. And so, yeah, this car could do like 20 laps and then they would just shut it down, or it could just break down altogether. The fact is that they need to be on track, have to be doing laps, right? So if the car breaks down, it breaks down, but you still need to be out there collecting the data on the car. And look, I've seen people write to me saying like, oh, collecting data, who collects data? What are you talking about? Like, this is Formula One. Like, it is data collection. That's all it is. Like,
that's what it is.
Like, figure it out. Like, you collect as much data as you can in your car because that's what's going to make it better. So, look, it's going to be important for them to be out on track. It's going to be important for them to keep running. And if they only make it 20 laps, they only make it 20 laps. If they only make it one lap, they only make it one lap. But they have to be out on track, Adam, doing laps.
Yeah, no. So they are going to be there. And they are going to be doing laps, as you say. I think the question I would have, excuse me for coughing there, is at what point, like, okay, you're Aston Martin and you're internally talking about this. We know we're not going to be able to finish this race. How many races, Tim, are we going to go before they can confidently finish one?
That's the question, right? Like, we don't know. Nobody knows. No one knows. Like, no one knows anything about, like, how these regulations are even going to go at them. Like, we don't even know, like, who Mercedes may be fast. They might not even be the best team. Like, no one knows. No one knows. What I'm trying to say here. So, after 6 races, if they're 4% behind on engine development and compared to whatever the fastest engine is, if they're 4% behind in performance, which they already are way behind that, then they will have an opportunity to have extra dyno time, extra money to spend on upgrades, and getting well over 1 to 2 upgrades into an engine that they can then produce to the team. This thing has way more issues than that. Right? Like, it does. But if they're able to find countermeasures, then that's the best they're going to be able to do. Now, when it comes to the chassis itself, I mean, Newey went on to say that he felt that their chassis was probably the 5th fastest chassis on the grid. Now, not the 5th fastest race car, the 5th fastest chassis. So if you had an engine in it that is competitive, that's where that chassis is, like, in terms of its aerodynamic performance.
Right.
It has been scheduled for an aggressive update. This car is going to be aggressively updated. But if you're aggressively updating the car, but you don't have the power unit to go with it as well, then that's going to make things even tougher. So they're in a very difficult spot right now. There's probably not much they're going to be able to do until after race 6. And even then, it may take even longer to try and come up with some more fixes for it and to try and figure out how they can get some more power out of not only the battery, but the internal combustion engine as well.
Okay, so everybody's got to be patient. We get that. Tim, I wonder about the way this car was built, because I've seen some reports online. I don't know if you would categorize it this way, but I've been dying to ask you. The way people are dumbing this down for dumb guys like me is they're saying basically what Aston Martin did was built a car first and then told Honda, fit your engine in it. Now, we know from Nelson Valkenburg that, and from yourself, that Honda was late, right? They signed Honda late. Newey came on late. Everything was late. right? That's part of the season preview that we did on the Nailing the Apex channel. You should check it out. Is it true that they basically shrink rack the car? We're focusing on development. All right, Honda, fit your engine in, and it doesn't fit or it doesn't work? Or is that just an oversimplification?
That's impossible to do that.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure because that's making the rounds.
I don't know. Listen, like, oh my God.
There's a lot of misinformation out there, which is why I bring it to the show, because we must dispel it, my friend.
Okay.
We must dispel.
All right.
I know.
All right. Fair enough. Okay.
And no. Listen, you're already rolling your eyes at me 10 minutes into our first show.
Okay, well, hold on. Well, I'll give a quick explanation.
Yeah.
So those who are watching or listening who may not fully grasp or understand the story will. So when these regulations were conceived, it was essentially based around the power unit and the battery itself, and the battery having more power and the engine matching it. So 50-50. So a 50% output from the battery, 50% output from the engine. I mean, at this point, I don't even think it's 50-50 right now. It's probably like, I don't know, 50-47 at this point. But that being said, it was more conceived on the power unit side, the regulation. It wasn't so much conceived on the chassis car side. That's why when we got the original documentation about the chassis, there was like teams throwing their hands up in the air, like these are going to be slower than F2 cars. Like there's no development here for aerodynamics, and it's all based on the power. So usually when we get regulations, it's car first, then the engine.
Got it.
So they can produce a car that's going to brake as late as possible, have high cornering speeds, lots of downforce, increased aerodynamics, and then what's in the back of it. And what are we running for an engine? And this is what we're running. Okay, if this is what we're running for engines, then this is the space you can build the engine in. Where with this set of regulation, it's more, we're going to build the engine, then you're going to build the car.
Right.
And you got to match the engine. So if the engine isn't giving you, I should call it power unit. So the power unit's not giving you the performance that you need.
Which it isn't in Honda's case. Not even close.
Yes, exactly. But that also influences how the car gets built. So if that's not working, then the updates that you bring to your car, well, they might not work either, because you've decided that, well, not the Aston Martin, the regulation, like the FIA and F1 have decided, in the OEMs have decided to go in that direction. So that's what we're kind of working with here. Like when it comes to this regulation, it's going to be tricky. And I think, Adam, one of the, like, how do I put this? Because I don't want to get too into the weeds with it. But when, let's say, like when Adrian Newey shows up to build a car, right?
Yeah.
He's supposed to be there in March. He arrives at Aston Martin in March. So he's late getting to Aston Martin because of his gardening leave. So he's already 3 months behind.
Yep.
But when he gets there and he sees, like, okay, this is what we've been working on, these are our ideas, he's looking at it like, no, like we need to redo some of these ideas. So then they kind of go back to the drawing board on that end. For him to say that they have the 5th fastest chassis, and if that's true, I mean, that's a very impressive considering how late they were building the car out.
Yep. So
now it's on Honda to, bring the performance. Bring it, right?
Okay.
So
now, listen.
It's not as bad as it was when Honda first came in 2015.
Right. Then that was bad.
Yeah, that was bad. But it's still like, I mean, the drivers are even making jokes about it now. I mean, in the press conference that I was on with Valtteri Bottas just before I jumped on, he was asked who he thought the top 3 will be battling for the driver's title this year, and he said if he was going to say who the top 3 were, he said Lance Stroll, Fernando Alonso, and George Russell, and then he said Russell will win because Mercedes was sandbagging during testing, and George will win in Abu Dhabi.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, I want to touch on George in a second.
Yeah. I'm just telling you, like, where everybody's at right now. Like,
no, it's good, and I'm glad you are, because George is our next segment after you break down a little piece of Melbourne. Now, this is going to be interesting this year. Every year on Nailing the Apex, we have Tim in the sim. And every track, we kind of went through them all last year as a general track. This year, we're going to kind of boil it down a little bit to bits and pieces that are going to be important. And Tim, you're going to use a bunch of jargon that we've never heard before because of these new, not engines, but power units, really, that we're going to be talking about. And it was kind of difficult because you're using a year-old video game in F1 2025 to try to illustrate things based on, a video game that was based on last year's specs. So it's going to be interesting to see you sweat your way through that one. But have a look as Tim breaks it down for you.
All right, for the Australian Grand Prix, I'm going to take you through a few things, what you might see with these cars. Obviously, we have to use F1 2025 because we don't have F1 2026 out. It won't be out this year, that's for sure. I think there's just too much when it comes to the regulation to try and really map out what these cars are going to do, what they're going to sound like, and things of that nature. So I just wanted to run you through a couple things that you may notice when the cars are out on track, and then I'm going to take you through part of a corner that's out here, Sector 2. It's going to be the first part of Sector 2 that I'll take you through, and then I'll show you how the MGUK, how we're going to hear a lot of super clipping will take effect on the long back straightaway here in Australia. But first and foremost, one of the things you're going to see probably a lot of is cars when they're coming out of slower turns like this here. So this will be turn 1, this will be 2 or 3, I think, and 4 here. When the driver goes to apply the power, the car's going to look like it's being shot out of a cannon. And as we come up to this section here, since there's less downforce on the car, it'll be interesting to see if this is a corner that could be done flat out, or is it going to require a lift? And that end's going to show us the driver sort of the skill in this sort of area, because this is a fast corner with a really fast exit that if you get it wrong, I mean, it's going to spit you right into the wall and you're going to crash the car. So that'll be one thing to watch out for sure. But this is coming to the end of Sector 2, Sector 1. As we approach Sector 2 here, this is going to be a little tap of the brake, and you're going to get down to about 4th or 5th gear, at least in these cars. We'll see what it's like for this new regulation of car. It might be 3rd to try and harvest a bit more energy. But essentially, if we take a look at the track here, we'll go for a lower angle view. You can see that the pavement actually sort of dips away. There's a bit of, I don't want to say elevation change, because we're not really going up really high or down really low, but there is a bit of a dip in towards the apex. And when you're trying to get the car into the corner, you want to take advantage of this. It will provide you with a little bit more grip. However, you have to get the braking done properly before you commit to the turns, so you can get a little more positive bite on the front end, so you can get the front end of the car to turn in a lot more positively. And as you do, you will want to try and get the car as close to this apex curving as possible with your front right tire. So you kind of want to be in and around here and on top of this yellow-green curbing on my right-hand side. And if you notice, there's not much steering lock in the actual steering wheel, because essentially I've got it pointed where my exit is going to be into the next corner, but you want to allow the car to be a little free here so you can take up a bit of the space that's on the exit within the next turn here. As you see, the car comes over, and then I'm going to use all of this. This is definitely getting used for sure. It depends how far the drivers are going to want to take the car. It also depends on the energy deployment, which is going to be something that you're going to hear a lot about, which brings us into our next section of this track. So you get this corner done properly, this previous corner I just took you through, and you come to here, and you're going to see that the drivers will start to deploy energy. So the battery is going to be deployed in a big way because you have a really long straightaway that's coming up here. So you're riding along this curb a little bit, the car is starting to deploy energy, and what's going to eventually happen is what's going to be called super clipping. So the driver's going to be in either 7th or 8th gear through this really long straightaway, and instead of the car starting to really accelerate, see how I'm just accelerating, the car's going to start to slow something like this, like not this slow, but the car will gradually begin to slow down. And what's happening during that phase is what we've been referring to as super clipping. And essentially what's happening within that phase is that the MGUK is taking control of the basically of draining the internal combustion engine of its energy, right? So that's when you're going to see these cars start to slow. You'll hear super clipping referenced quite a bit, and you're going to hear it more than likely on this straightaway because it is such a long straightaway, and these cars may be pretty energy starved, I would say, or energy, a lack of energy within the car itself. So in and around this section, just watch out for that. You'll hear the commentators talk about super clipping. And essentially, it's when the car has essentially stopped accelerating, and what has ended up happening is that MGUK has come in, it's taken over, and it's basically reversing the energy out of the internal combustion engine and into the battery, so the car will start to slow. The driver's foot's flat to the floor, and then the driver will lift, do a little coast, downshift. That's another part we're going to talk about. Come into this turn and then squeeze the throttle back on. Now, another thing you're going to notice is drivers using gears differently. And I'll show you a part where that's probably going to happen. It's going to be probably the second last turn, I feel, where they can really dig into using the gearbox and the battery. So you're coming up in this turn, listen to the downshifts, and you see I went down into first gear there, and you could hear the engine RPM spin up as going rim rim. And so essentially what's happening here is that downshift and that amount of engine revving, so to speak, that's also helping to charge the battery. So for racing enthusiasts, those of you who really look at this stuff and how the driver's driving the car, that is going to be something you will see on this track that's going to be a little weird. And it wouldn't happen, I wouldn't expect into turn 1 here. It doesn't make sense for you to kill that amount of speed. There's going to be a lot of deployment going on in this little straightaway here when it comes to that energy being deployed. Here you may see the drivers downshift into a gear where it just overrevs the engine. This is going to be an interesting section to see how much the drivers lift coming into here. Do they treat it as a flat out turn, or do they not? Here, remember, we're going to go down a couple gears, get this thing into the apex, and then use up all this road. And now again, as we're going down this long straightaway, you're going to be hearing commentators talk about super clip. This is when this is going to happen, is down this straightaway, and that's when this car starts to slow a bit. Driver's still full throttle, come off, a couple downshifts, get the car in, and away they go down this next straightaway where they can deploy a little bit more energy. And again, listen to the gearbox. Do they overslow the cars going into some of these corners? And again, that's when the driver's trying to harvest as much of the energy, like right here, harvest as much of the energy as they can from the downshifts. So again, just for this first race, and things might change, but just for this first race, pay attention to how energy gets used, how it gets deployed, how the driver uses it, and where do they deploy to make attacks and make overtakes.
So, Tim, one of the things that you mentioned, you mentioned Valtteri Bottas talking about George Russell being the probable winner. Carlos Sainz called him one of his favorites to win. You just literally, before we recorded this show tonight, got off a press conference with George Russell. And obviously there's been a lot said about this Mercedes power unit dating back to almost 2 years ago about how far ahead they were. They look fast. They seem fast. People can sandbag. But when you sandbag, I think you got to be pretty confident in what your team can do. And I get the sense that right at the beginning of a regulation like this, especially a major shift, you're probably not going to sandbag. What was the mood in the press conference with George Russell? How does he feel about his chances?
I think it was good, Adam, because Valtteri was there and he was on fire.
He just vintage.
Oh man, he was cracking jokes left, right, and center. I mean, people are definitely going to see these things pop up on F1's social channels for sure, because he was on one. Yeah, he was on one in this one. But I think George just had that air of calm and confidence that he always seems to exude. And I think for George, just for him in the off season, just working on the details of his driving has probably taken him to another level, I would say. And he's already coming off of like one hell of a season. The car that wasn't the greatest, but he did make the most of it. And I would say, last season, George was probably one of the most consistent drivers on the grid. Like,
no question.
He was always just hanging around. Something goes wrong, George is there to pick up the podium. He's hanging around, collecting all those good points. And look, if he's able to, be as consistent as he was last season, then yeah, he's definitely one of the favorites. There's no question about it. I'm curious to see, though, just how much Mercedes was sandbagging and testing. That's what I'm curious. I'm really curious. Like, are we gonna see like
George, height of Lewis Hamilton era dominance here?
When like Mercedes would just crank it up to 11 once qualifying rolled around and just blow the doors off of everybody, and you'd be like, wow. Ooh, it's going to be a long season, just like one of those. That's what I want to see, because I don't think they're there. I don't think Mercedes has that. I think they have a level. I don't think they have that kind of a level, though.
Right.
Like this team has lost personnel, right? The people that were on this team back in their heyday from like 2014 to 2021, like a lot of those people are gone.
So this is a very new team in that sense.
James Allison is still there. They can thank their lucky stars for him still being around,
but he left for a bit and then came back.
He did. Yeah. Well, because they were like, we need you. Come back now. We need you. And so having him there is huge. Having a driver like George, also really big deal. But when you look at the other teams that are also running Mercedes power, there's McLaren, and that car looks really good, man. And Lando, like I've been saying, like Lando looked like a really confident guy when I saw him in Bahrain, more so than I've ever seen him.
Is that because he's a world champion now?
Absolutely it is. And you can just tell that he wants another one. And I think he knows now how to get that done in a better way than the way he approached it last season. And then you've got Max Verstappen, and George saying back in January when I was on a press conference with him then, he wants a piece of Max. He wants to fight Max Verstappen for a driver's title. And with this new regulation now coming into the fold, Adam, it's going to throw in races where you thought Mercedes was going to have an advantage, and then all of a sudden Ferrari comes out of nowhere and they're the ones who are the quickest team at this track. And then we go to another track, and maybe that's a Red Bull track, and we go to another track, and maybe McLaren has enough downforce on the car that they're beating the Mercedes. And so we're going to get swings, I think, like this season, like big swings for the next 6 months. Like we may start the season and Mercedes will be the quickest, but by the time we get to the end, they might not.
Well, it kind of reminds me of 2022. Ferrari came out to just a blistering start, and obviously Red Bull caught them. And we thought, Tim, it was going to be between those two teams back then. But I don't think anybody thought Ferrari would win so many of the first few races and then never win again. And then the next year, Ferrari won a race and Red Bull won the rest of the races. Like, these regulation changes can be crazy in terms of what they can bring or take away from the sport. So you think Lando looks confident? You think George looks confident? Was there somebody, and listen, media day hasn't happened yet. Is there somebody who's a sleeper for you going into this weekend that nobody's really talked about, and you go, like maybe Lando was that guy, but he's the world champion, so he can't really be a sleeper. So is there anybody that you're like, keep an eye on this person or this team?
I would say before I jump to that person, I would say Lando was heavily disrespected by the bookmakers. That's for sure.
Oh, really? I didn't see the odds.
The odds makers for sure. I mean, I did a hit for TSN on this. Like, it was massive disrespect.
What were they saying?
He's carrying the number 1 on his car, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're carrying the number 1 on your car, I mean, you need to sprinkle a little bit of love, like on my guy here, because what they had him at was just ridiculous. Let's see if I can pull it up. But it was what the heck was the number? He was so far unfavored, it wasn't even friggin' funny, man.
Well, I think that might make it a good bet.
Yeah, for sure. That's what I was basically saying on SportsCenter. I was like, I mean, definitely bet on this. Like, bet this
Take
guy.
That bet. Like, take that bet.
I mean, he looked great on track, and McLaren, I think you cannot, you can't. That is a championship winning operation there, and you don't just lose that overnight. Like, they still have all the same people in the same places.
Yeah.
And now they have Mercedes power. Like, what do they have to worry about, right? All they need to do is just keep developing the car, and they will get there. Oscar Piastri is that driver who I think people just aren't talking about. And maybe some
I was going to ask about him next anyway, so it's good that you brought him up.
Yeah, but Adam, maybe some might feel that Oscar may struggle a bit coming out of the gates in this regulation. I'm one of them. I think that it will take Oscar a few races to figure out the way of driving the car now. It is something that I could see when watching him during testing. And that is the level of grip. It's the sensing where the grip is that he had struggled with in a lot of the later tracks on the calendar last season. And one of the reasons why he coughed up the championship was essentially trying to find that confidence on tracks that are slicker. They don't have a lot of grip. The car moves around, slides around a lot more. With these cars, what you are going to see this year is cars moving around. These cars move around, big time move around. Like, you're going to be like, whoa, where did that come from? Like, because there's just so much torque coming through the rear axle now that these guys are just like trying everything they can to save the car. And I think that for the first few races, Oscar, will take some time to get his feet wet and to understand, but he's one of those drivers that's like a sponge, man. Like, he just keeps learning and keeps getting better. I think he is a world champion for sure. And I think he's one of those drivers that people just aren't talking about that they should be talking about.
I wanted to ask you about Oscar because during our season preview episodes with Nelson Valkenburg, I wanted to talk a little bit more about Oscar, but there just wasn't enough time because there were so many other things going on. I've read reports, and Oscar's commented on this, Tim, that Mark Webber, who, if you're longtime Formula One fan, you know Mark Webber. Christian Horner was once asked, what driver gave you the most headaches? He said Mark Webber, but Mark Webber came damn close to being a world champion and is a gritty, tough guy who really, as Oscar Piastri's agent, is going to advocate for his driver. It's been reported, and Oscar has talked about this, that Mark will not be at the track as much this year. Can you tell me why? And Oscar said, yeah, it's just a kind of change of plan. And you mentioned he's in Drive to Survive this year. They're in the helicopter in Monaco. What's going on there, man?
I'm surprised he was in that scene, to be perfectly honest with you, because Mark has really done everything he can to be out of the spotlight.
Okay.
When it comes to being with and around Oscar as well. Mark's a driver who I always really looked up to. I loved the grittiness of Mark Webber. I loved his work ethic as well, and something I tried to emulate with myself when I was a driver was learning from him and what he was doing and how hard he was working and what he was doing to get better. And he is a driver that I always looked up to when I was younger. And for Mark and Oscar, it's not really clear exactly what's happened there. I have a feeling maybe McLaren has asked Oscar to maybe ask Mark to stay at a distance. Is
that because Mark's a passionate guy? Is it an emotion thing?
That, again, like these are things that no one knows just yet because Oscar hasn't really talked about it. So I'm basically just pulling this stuff from what I feel and think, not necessarily what I know.
Right.
And whatever I say here about the two of them and their relationship,
it's speculation.
Be totally wrong, man. It's all speculation. So I would say that what Oscar has said is Mark's not going to be at a lot of the races. He still stays in contact with him. He talked to him quite a few times during the week, during testing. And if he's talking to Mark over the phone quite a few times during the week, then there isn't anything to read into any of it, right? Like there's still open communication from the sounds of things. And honestly, I think he's a great manager for Oscar.
Yeah,
I really do. Like I don't think you could ask Adam, for a better... right? Because but Adam, you're looking at it through a different lens than I am, right? So
right,
like for you, what do you see?
Well, I mean, listen, I all I know is that Mark was a passionate. It was described to me as a passionate advocate for Oscar Piastri, which means there were probably a few yelling matches that didn't make the cameras on Drive to Survive, as you would expect there would be, especially with a championship race that close. I wonder if, too, because, listen, let's be honest. If you read Mark's book, Mark is going to be hypersensitive to another driver getting favoritism on a top team. It's what happened to him, right? Sebastian Vettel was the wunderkind. He was the kid that came out of nowhere and was unbelievable and won Red Bull's first race and battled with Mark for years. Yeah. And, everybody knows the multi-21 and all that shit. And, we don't need to get into it, but you know what I'm saying, right? So I kind of wonder sometimes if a guy like Mark Webber might see issues where maybe perhaps there aren't any. And he's being protective of Oscar. And again, purely speculative on my part, but being protective of Oscar because he's been through something similar. Now, I will be honest. I genuinely think McLaren, with all, and I'm a McLaren guy, but I think that McLaren does everything they possibly can, Tim, to make it as fair as possible. It's Formula One. It isn't fair. But I do think, you don't hear ever a story out of McLaren that, Lando got a part that Oscar didn't get, unless they're literally testing something, right? We want to test one car with it, one car without. But if the championship's that close, there's no, hey, Albon got these parts and Logan Sargent didn't, and Logan's not going to get them. That doesn't exist in McLaren with these two guys. So I wonder if Mark just kind of has he's got a little PTSD, man. And I don't blame him. Red Bull was a contentious crazy, insane environment back then.
Well, a good point that you make there, Adam, about the components and things of that nature, because I remember last year we got to Canada and Lando had gotten a new front suspension for his car, and it specifically was designed for Lando so he could get a bit better feel. But then by the time we got to the British Grand Prix, I went straight up to Oscar and I said, "Hey, like, how come you didn't take the new front suspension that was being offered? Like, did they not offer it to you?" And he literally said to me, he's like, no, they offered it to me. He's like, I just didn't need it. He's like, I didn't need it. I didn't require it. So I didn't take it. So that is McLaren trying to make sure they're treating both drivers equally. I do sense that is what they tried to do at that team. I mean, Oscar is listen, they're both number one drivers here.
Yeah.
They're both number one drivers, right? So that team knows that.
Yeah.
And I think that team knows that they got to hold on to both of them.
So
they got to do whatever they got to do to hold on to both of them, right?
Yes, of course. I mean, that's the future of McLaren is those two guys. And I think, Tim, if they can keep this scenario as positive as possible, there are going to be negative moments. We know that. But if you can keep this as positive as possible, these two guys are going to push each other. These two guys are going to make each other better. They're going to make each other sharper. They sharpen that knife, right? You don't do that. You don't do that by leaving it in the drawer. You got to bring it to the sharpener and get it to work. So I'm interested to see what a mature McLaren team looks like. A couple of world championships behind them now, and a drivers' world championship. It's going to be an interesting year for them. I want to move on quickly to Ferrari for a second here, because obviously we haven't had the media day yet. When this is released, all the press conferences are going to happen.
Well, we've had some of it, right?
We've had some. Obviously, had George and stuff.
It is ongoing. So as you and I are doing this, it is happening.
It's happening.
What
kind of Lewis Hamilton do you think we are going to get in the interviews? Not in the race, in the interviews. Are we getting confident Lewis Hamilton? Are we getting Lewis Hamilton that's frustrated and annoyed and therefore complaining? Like you never know with Lewis. What kind of Lewis are we getting to start this season?
Good question. I think we're going to get a confident one. I mean, I've seen some of his Instagram posts, and he seems extremely motivated, which is good when you're trying to start a new regulation and a new season. We'll see how it goes with him in this regulation, Adam. It's not anything like he's ever done before. Mm-hmm. Like, it's different for all these drivers, and we'll see how the more experienced drivers handle it. I think Nelson had said it best when he was on here last, that the drivers who are from the digital age, the digital world, like Verstappen, Gabriel Bortoleto, just to name a few, could get on top of this thing faster. Mm-hmm. And I tend to agree with him. And I don't know what that's going to do, like for Lewis. I really don't. This could be a difficult season, but it might not. Right. Things might pan out well for him. The car itself, so when you go back to 2020 and 2021, and I've talked about this on here a little bit, didn't go into huge detail on it, but if you look at those cars, mm-hmm. and if you look at let's just say you look at both Mercedes and Red Bull, and the car itself ran a lot of rake, what's called rake. So rake is essentially, if you're looking at it straight on from a stable platform, it hasn't moved anywhere. The front of the nose is going to be down and the rear of the car is going to be up, and you can probably see right underneath the rear of the car. But then as that car starts traveling down a straightaway through air, that car begins to squat and the rear of the car comes down, and then it basically gets almost sucked to the ground. But then when you come to the braking zone, that weight transfer that happens goes from the rear of the car to the front of the car, and that rake comes back up. You can kind of see right underneath the rear of the car again. And that allows you to have more front grip. So a positive front end allows you to get the car into the corner. So when you turn, it immediately complies and you can drive it straight towards the apex. You may get a little bit of rotation on the rear now because the rear is starting to come off the ground. It's almost like a big go-kart in a way.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can pivot it, you can snap it around, and that's what Lewis was really good at. He was really, really good with that regulation. A lot of the drivers, well, not, I shouldn't say a lot. There were some drivers who were okay with it. There were some drivers who were really good with it. And there were some drivers who couldn't really handle it because the rear just moved around a little bit too much for them. Mm. Then we got to 2022. And with 2022, you had the ground effect floor. Mm-hmm. And that changed the whole philosophy of rake. There was no more true rake left in these cars. They were generating downforce from the floor, so you couldn't have the ride height do that. You couldn't have the rear pop up and the nose come down. You could maybe do it a tiny, tiny bit, but not as severe as it was. Then we come into this regulation, and now we've got rake back in the car again, right? So front of the car, the rear of the car is off the ground a bit, front's diving forward. So that is a car concept that Lewis drove really well.
Okay.
Really, really, really well. However, you mix this new concept with this new power unit regulation, and now you're having to drive the car differently. So yeah, you may be good at braking really late, slinging the car into the corner, have a good positive front end, and getting back to the power because you got lots of downforce and being really aggressive. Where now you're lifting, you're coasting into the braking zone, you're getting onto the brakes nice and hard. You may have to coast a little bit towards the apex, so you can't really like swing the car around. You can't really get back to the power. And now if you try to get back to the power really aggressively, you're going to go right into the wall because there was just so much torque coming through the rear axle now because of all of the battery technology and the internal combustion engine coming together. So it is going to be a bit more of a different driving style. So that's what I'm curious to see with like the Fernandos, the Lewises, the Nico Hulkenbergs, to see how they kind of adapt to it.
Okay. All right.
That was a long drawn
No, it's good to know.
Explanation, and I may have lost everybody, but that's how the driving is probably going to be for the first little bit.
So, okay, then we'll wrap this episode up with predictions. And this might be the most unfair prediction I ask you for this entire set of regulations because we have no idea what's going to happen. But Tim, give me your completely out of the blue, we'll never hold you to this, top three for this race in Melbourne. Who's 3? Who's 2? Who's 1?
Oh my God. Okay, so I went for a run today and I was thinking about this. I was thinking, okay, well, I wasn't thinking top 3. I was thinking like who was going to win it, but top 3 is good. I thought that George Russell and Kimi Antonelli, they lock out the front row.
Okay.
But then we see the true Ferrari get unleashed.
Okay.
Both Lewis and Charles are starting like P4, P5, but their start is so incredible that they eventually make their way up to P1 and P2.
Because they're supposed to be gaining with that smaller turbo. They're supposed to be getting a lot of places in that first lap, right?
Exactly. And if this is going to be energy, energy harvest, energy deficit, energy harvest, energy deficit, if that's what the type of racing is that we may see, then all you got to do is get the lead and make sure you're managing energy as best as possible, and you've got yourself a win, let me tell you. So I'm going Charles Leclerc winning. I'm going Lewis Hamilton in second. I'm going Lando Norris third.
I love it. Tim Hauraney, everybody.
Wait. What's yours?
Oh, I couldn't possibly. No, okay. You know what? I'm going to go straight ahead. I'm going to say George Russell wins it. And then we're already talking on Monday about, maybe this is his year. I like Lewis Hamilton in second place, so I'm going to steal that idea from you. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the two McLarens, probably Lando, in third place. But I like the idea of 3 different teams in the top 3. And I think we might regret, Tim, just saying it, we may regret leaving Max Verstappen out of both of our lists because
I know. I feel
you never bet against the GOAT, man.
No, that's true. But let me explain why, because then people will know. So for those of you watching, listening, go to my social media, go to my Twitter account because it's on there.
Yeah.
I did a sit-down interview with Laurent Mekies. And I grilled Laurent about this. And he said it was going to be a painful start. He also said that the car may even come to a stop in some races. But he said they're hoping to make ground later in the season.
Okay.
Now, that's why I didn't go with Max. Now, if Laurent had said to me, like, we'll see how it goes. You know, it might be okay. We may not be as quick as the Mercedes, but we might be there. Then I would have went Verstappen, probably winning, because he's the difference maker when it comes to all of it.
Tim Hauraney, I'm very excited. The season is underway officially. We're here.
It's going to be a good one, buddy. It's going to be a good one.
Buddy, it's going to be sick. We got
whatever
testing.
happens, Adam, there'll be something.
I'm so glad we're here, though. Testing Friday, qualifying Saturday. I won't get to watch testing because it's NHL trade deadline here in Canada. But I will get to watch some qualifying Saturday and some race Sunday. And by the way, in North America, that's overnight. They never want you to start easy. So
actually, before we sign off, Adam, they moved the race back this year. So now for us on the Eastern time zone, the race starts Saturday at 11 p.m.
Oh, I love that. That's hot to me because I am 37 years old and I have a 7-year-old. I just simply can't do it anymore, Tim. I can't do it. All right. Well, so we will see you on Sunday, Monday for our recording. And don't forget, Tim always records a podcast for Nailing the Apex on Saturday in between or just after, qualifying to update you as the weekend goes on. So if you need to sneak away from your family and listen, feel free to do that. And then Sunday, obviously, we got the race. Sunday, Monday, we'll be releasing the post-race podcast. And that will be the same for every race weekend this year on Nailing the Apex from STPN. Tim, it's good to be back at it.
Oh, buddy, I'm excited. Thanks, Adam. Have a good weekend.